This is the Russian Empire, and it's the 1800s. It was ruled by this man, Tsar Alexander I. Tsar Alexander was known for finally defeating this guy, Napoleon. And by defeating, I mean running away and burning down Moscow to wait for Russia's true greatest ally, the winter, to reduce Napoleon's forces from 600,000 to 100,000, while only participating in one real battle. This is important because it meant Russia was now at the big boys table, which meant they had a lot of power in the world. After capturing a couple of Japanese fishermen and interrogating them to learn about their language and culture, they thought the Japanese might be pretty cool, so they wanted to start diplomatic relations with them. Of course, this was during the Japanese Tokugawa or Edo period, where their country was closed to all foreigners except the Dutch, who helped them kill a couple Christians a couple years back, so they thought they were pretty cool, and the Koreans and Chinese because they're just close by. So Tsar Alexander appointed this guy, Nikola Razanov, to enter diplomatic talks with the shogun. He entered diplomatic talks with a series of gifts, as well as returning all captured fishermen. He then waited for the shogun to notice him for 6 months, and then was promptly kicked out, along with his gifts, but not with the fishermen. Shogun's a cool guy. This left some bad blood in Tsar Alexander's mouth, due to him just kind of brushing him off like it was nothing. So after Tsar Alexander died, Tsar Nicholas continued on, trying to infiltrate Japan. There was a couple unsuccessful attacks, but nothing really happened. So Nicholas decided to focus his eyes on two islands. The islands of Kuri and the islands of Sakhalin, just north of Japan. But officials said it was a bad idea because it was cold and would disrupt trade with China. Nothing was really happening in Japan with relation to Russia, but this all changed in 1852, when Matthew Perry came in with an armada of ships and told Japan that they needed to socialize. So they tried, and they realized that they were really far behind. This led to the Meiji Restoration, where they deposed the shogun and made the emperor the real emperor again, but not really, he was still a puppet. Real things that were happening was a Japanese oligopoly. Through Western tech and ideas, they created a constitution and a congress, but it was really just run by the oligopoly and the small group on the top. And they did a lot of stuff, such as military expansion, invading here and here, implementing major industrialization, made banks, stock markets, zapatus, and traded. When Japan was modernizing, the new Tsar Alexander II, came and got some land from China, near the Amaro River and the Treaty of Peking. They made a trading port there and a naval base, and they called it, Vladivostok, that's good enough. But because it was so cold and would freeze most of the time, they decided that they needed a more effective trading route and a better place to secure their borders against the Japanese. So they looked at this tiny island called Tsushima, but the Western powers and the British said that they couldn't really do that, so they stopped. The Russian settlers still were thinking of Nicholas's original plan of settling in these two places, the Kuri Islands and the island of Sakhalin. So after a couple settlers got in a couple conflicts, they finally agreed in the Treaty of St. Petersburg in 1875 that Japan would get the Kuri Islands and that Russia would get Sakhalin, that place over there. After the First Sino-Japanese War, Tsar Alexander II died, and he was replaced with Tsar Nicholas II. Tsar Nicholas II had a prime minister. His name was Sergei Witte. Sure, Witte is good enough. And he was faced with an important decision: be friends with Japan, or help Germany and France protect the now weak China. Of course, Sergei chose the obvious option of China, because he still thought Japan was no match for Russia, if it ever came down to it. This let them take two new trading ports. Well, not really take, because they were China's, but they gave them to Japan, and then Japan was forced to give them back, and China ceded them to Russia. So there was no war or anything, but the Japanese were still pretty angry. Eventually, Russia decided China wasn't very cool anymore, and just took the two ports because China couldn't really do anything. So they got to build a new railway, pretty exciting, and connect Serbia with Vladivostok, the place before. Um, and they knew Japan was going to be angry, so they used the Boxer Rebellion to bring in a massive army to Manchuria to help them build the railway. Japan was pretty angry, but because they were still respectful and honorable people then, I know they turned it, but we don't worry about that. They decided that they could reach compromise with the Russians. So they asked the Russians if it would be cool if the Russians would get Manchuria and Japan would get Korea. Tsar Nicholas II said no because he kind of wanted Korea, but also the peasants really hated him at the time and wanted to lift their spirits with a nice little war. Russia thought this was going to be easy, but Japan quickly declared war and hit them with a surprise attack on Port Arthur. They didn't actually have to declare war at the time because declaring war was made a law in 1907. This is 1902, but Japan's just cool like that right now. So after losing a couple battles, Tsar Nicholas II was confident that their navy would finally silence the Japanese. Of course, this didn't happen, and Russia suffered a very humiliating loss. With the help of Theodore Roosevelt, both sides agreed to a peace agreement. They would leave Manchuria and return to the Chinese. The Japanese also got Liaodong Peninsula, which meant that they kind of got Port Arthur because the Russians couldn't really get to it anymore. They also got half of the Skahalan Islands, the one up from Japan, that they agreed to in the Treaty of St. Petersburg. Defeating the Russians solidified Japan as a major world power, because defeating the Chinese before was pretty cool, but now that they defeated Russia, one of the biggest countries in the world, they were really a problem to be notified with. And of course, the Americans somehow got a Nobel Peace Prize from it, and the world moved on. Except Tsar Nicholas II was in a bit of trouble. The loss caused outrage among the Russian people, which was a big factor leading to the Russian Revolution in 1905, where a Russian priest, Father Gaban, led a bunch of peaceful protesters to the Tsar's palace and asked for more freedom and better working conditions. Nicholas heard of this and ran. To replace him, they brought in a bunch of troops and ordered them to stop Father Gaban from giving him their petition. So when Father Gaban reached the gates, the men opened fire and killed over 200 people and injured near 1,000. After that, everyone was against the Tsar, even the rich people. But Sergei Woody from before, had a plan. He wrote a manifesto called the October Manifesto that gave people freedom of speech, conscious association, and created a constitutional order, as well as the Duma, which gave liberals an elective assembly. After implementing the October Manifesto and bringing troops home from the Russo-Japanese War, Tsar Nicholas was able to restore order, kind of. In 1913, after things started to settle down, Sergei started to focus on farming, which caused the economy to go up. Tsar Nicholas II also enlisted the help of Rasputin to help cure his son's illness. This wasn't too popular with the people because Rasputin was kind of a creep, but the economy was going pretty good, so nobody really cared. Things seemed to be okay in Russia at the time, relatively. Yes, they had been humiliated by a quote-unquote inferior nation, and they were no longer, well, they never really were, but they weren't a really big power in the world because of that. They were still pretty big, but other countries were more powerful than them, but that didn't really matter because of the economy. But they weren't getting into any major conflicts. The Soviets were quiet now because they didn't have anything to be angry about. Tsar Nicholas' son, Alexei, was cured from hemophilia, probably caused from incest. A big win for Rasputin. But all was kind of calm in Russia. This wouldn't last very long because, as we know, next year, Tsar Nicholas II and his new best bud Rasputin are going to run into some problems because someone is going to decide to kill a duke, and everything would go bad pretty quickly. But for now, we can say that in 1913, Russia was okay.